Hey everybody, welcome back to another 10-minute Marvel video. And as we wrap up here, last week we wrapped up Ironheart. And now we actually don't have that many Disney Plus shows kind of on the docket at this point. I say that, we know that we have some shows that are coming up here. We have Wonder Man that's coming out as a Spotlight series. We have another season of Daredevil Born Again. I believe there's plans potentially for a third season that needs to be probably determined a little bit off of how well the second season does. And we have the Vision show, Vision Quest, as it's called. We have Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, X-Men 97. For some animated stuff, we have Marvel Zombies for an animated show, though I don't expect that to get a second season. That seems like a one-off thing. We have Eyes of Wakanda. We know that that's vignettes, kind of a one-off thing. So I wanted to ask the question today, what shows could Marvel do, and do I kind of hope that they do? Now, I'm going to kick it off with probably the two biggest ones that I hope they do. However, I think they're similar, so I don't think that they're going to do both. They'd be apt to do one or the other. I just can't see them doing both. And that's because it's Champions or Strange Academy. Now, I think that Ironheart was supposed to set up Strange Academy. I think a character like Riri Williams actually going to Strange Academy could be interesting. Or Zelma going to Strange Academy, Zelma's mother potentially becoming a teacher there. It'd be a spot to introduce characters like Nico Minoru, like Brother Voodoo. I'd love to see a Strange Academy show just because it's a formula that works. School, magic school, yeah, we're all familiar with Harry Potter. Whatever we think of it now, we're familiar with it and we understand why that concept works. We've seen other shows do that as well. The Magicians being a show and series that did that. Keeper of the Lost Cities. And there's more. It's just a trope that works well, and it allows for a changing cast as well. As you're following a character through the school, I think following like a Nico Minoru would be a great character to follow through the school several years. You have new students coming in, you have some graduating and going on to do other things, potentially becoming villains. And the comics themselves are really interesting because you have, for example, the son of Dormammu there. You have Asgardians there. You have Frost Giants there. You can go kind of all over the map for the characters who are at the school. They just need to have magic in their background. Actually, I think it'd be a great spot to potentially bring back, for example, Sylvie. Give her an opportunity as a teacher there and really play around with that. And there are a lot of magical villains that you could work with. The Hood would be a solid villain. Somebody who maybe learns about the school after Zelma maybe says, no, I can't give you what you want. I can't give you more powers. And now he comes after the school to try and get some powers from there. So that's why I would really love that. But I think that Marvel's probably going to go the direction of the Champions. Now, the Champions would be those younger characters like a Miss Marvel, like Kate Bishop, Eli Bradley, who we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then, they've introduced potentially more characters as well. An example of a character, this could again be a situation where you have the Hood as a villain for them. Or, I also like the idea of you have potentially someone like Mephisto as a villain for them. Mephisto is too big for them really to face off against. And that's the great thing about a villain like that. They have to come up with a way to not necessarily defeat Mephisto, but to help somebody get out of a deal with Mephisto. So if you bring in Dominic Thorne, Riri Williams, as a member of the team, that could be something that they have to deal with. It becomes kind of this conflict of interest. You made a deal with Mephisto to get Natalie back, but now Mephisto kind of has some control and is warping you. I think that that could be a fun way to handle it. And I think there'd be other options as well that you could go with. The Hood, like I mentioned before, being a decent option for a villain who they face up against. Baron Mordo, potential to bring him back there as well. So, a number of different kind of options there. What else, though, has been rumored? Because, sure, we could get second seasons of things. I think Hawkeye Season 2 is probably one of the more likely rumored ones, with more of a Kate Bishop focus to it. That's how I would want them to do it, and I think that's what it sounds like they're going to do. I know there was a news story a couple months ago at this point, I believe, where Jeremy Renner was basically like, yeah, they approached me, but they were offering me about half as much, and felt like the offer was kind of insulting. I don't think it was necessarily I can't believe Marvel would do that, I'll never work with them again. Nobody's going to do that. I think it was more of I want what's fair. And I think that there's probably a reason why it was less, that they planned on him being less in the show, making it more of a Kate Bishop focused show from the beginning, and just needed him for some cameo work. So depending on what the expectation is with that show, I'm sure they could come back to him and with a different dollar amount, maybe not as much as what he got paid for the first show, but to say, hey, here's a bump in your per episode, kind of per minute pricing, but it's still less. But that's just kind of speculation. I think that there's still more with Kate Bishop in particular, and with like what her mother has been up to, that could be interesting to play around with, especially if it overlaps with, say, a Mayor Fisk. Though, I kind of wonder if that Mayor Fisk element will be done with Daredevil Born Again at the end of Season 2. Another new thing that has been mentioned would be something like Nova. Though, the new rumors with Nova kind of place it more in the, could this be a movie? And kind of kicking off some of the cosmic stuff, or being a major cosmic player. So, I'd like to see a Nova show. I think that it'd be an interesting spot to introduce that character, or the Nova Corps. But I understand why they might look at it and go, this is a large enough cosmic player that we want it to be a movie. So, how would I do a show like that? And I think that's some of the reason why it might be a movie. Shows probably are better off if they're more grounded. Because the second you're in space, the second you're creating these elaborate locations, that becomes considerably more expensive. And while streaming shows do maintain an audience on streaming platforms, if you have them coming out regularly, oftentimes new shows only give so much of a bump in terms of what you make, and it's hard to quantify often how much certain shows provide in terms of revenue based off of a streaming service. And that's something I think that the industry has to figure out. which means that more expensive shows, such as a space show like Nova, would be harder to do. So then where else could Marvel go? And I think one of the areas you have to start thinking about, or at least I'm starting to think about, is what could they do with the X-Men? And this is where I think, depending on how they launch the X-Men post Secret Wars, you could see an X-Men team that shows up here. And this, to me, is where you could get potentially like an X-Force sort of team, where maybe they're a little bit more loosely tied into the X-Men. Could have characters that cross over. I mean, I love Rogue and Gambit. I want to see them in the movies. But what if you do a show where they're part of the X-Force team and they show up in the movies? You have those couple crossover characters, but then you have some other maybe lesser X-Men known characters, X-Men villains, who can show up for this show. It allows you to proliferate kind of X-Men out there for people who want a lot of X-Men stuff, while not dominating the movie scene fully. Because again, we've had these rumors, and I think I talked about it in a previous video, so that's where the again came from. I haven't talked about it yet in this video, but there's the rumor of this cosmic X-Men and supernatural kind of focus, kind of a three-pronged approach post Secret Wars. So that means we're not going to be getting Phase 7 might have 2 X-Men movies and another mutant movie, or something like that in it, or even 1 X-Men movie and a couple different mutant movies. So I think creating a show that has some sort of X-focus team, so X-Factor, X-Force is what I said before. I do think they have a team at some point in time called X-Factor, but X-Force would make a lot of sense to me. It'd make a lot of sense for them to create something that will probably actually will drive people to Disney Plus, and especially if they can drop in some fan favorite characters. So Gambit and Rogue, great fan favorite characters. Rogue has already kind of been the focus of the movies. Kind of, we've seen, not really the focus, but we've seen a lot of the story kind of through her lens, I would say, in the original X-Men movies. So setting her maybe off to the side a little bit and giving us a new character to kind of see that focus through, I'd love to see then her and Gambit kind of be the leaders of an X-Force team and get on to some more practical adventures, but equally crazy adventures. I think there's plenty of mutants who they could go up against where you don't need that massive budget for showing off everything, showing off all these crazy powers. But let me know your thoughts. Is there something where you were like, I'd really like to see that be kind of the next Marvel show project that they work on, especially live action? Drop that down in the comment section below. If you enjoy this content, please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Click that notification bell and check out the podcast where this past week, we're talking about Ironheart. And in this upcoming week, I believe the plan is going to be Ironheart characters. Where do we see them next? So definitely some of what I said here could show up there, and we'll have a whole conversation about that. You can find the podcast here on YouTube. Click onto the channel. As I said, subscribe and click that notification bell if you haven't already. We appreciate everybody who has and who is checking out these videos. And then click on the podcast tab. Or you can search for the 10 Minute Marvel podcast by searching 10 Minute Marvel, wherever you get your friendly neighborhood podcasts from. With that, we will see you next time.